Well, hi there. My name's Angus Hyland. I'm a partner at Pentagram Design, and I've been a partner there for probably, well, over 22 years now. And I run a small team, as all the Pentagram partners do, which consists of project managers and designers, mainly designers. And we work on all lots of different projects, from large scale to very small. Mainly, I'd say not exclusively, but mainly in the field of identity. We used to be called, years and years ago, corporate identity, but now we refer it more to brand identity. And that's basically what I do. The first piece of graphic design I saw, well, it probably can be answered in two ways. One, it's like a kind of bit of post-rationalization, but yeah, I wasn't aware it was a bit of graphic design. And the other one would be clearly a bit of graphic design, and I was aware of it. And so I'll start with that one. So because I was an avid collector of vinyl, because that was the only format you could get music on back in the 70s, early 70s. So record sleeves were, clearly part of my visual culture, and they're large format, 12 inches. So, they were always kind of great. So that was something like at school when I worked out, I could do art, but I couldn't do much music. I could, contribute to what I really loved, which was pop music. So that was one thing. But I mean, I think really, when I really came aware of it as being graphic design, was for some unknown reason. I really can't explain why, but because my father was a horticulturalist and my mum was a family planning nurse, and there were lots of other things in the house, nothing to do with graphic design. But there was a Letraset catalog there, Letraset, that early form of typefaces in a dry transfer sheet. And I used to, when I got home from school, because there was only 2 channels on the telly and not a huge library in my house, has to be said. They weren't bookish, even if I became bookish. We had this catalog, and I just used to pore over these typefaces, yeah? And then these little kind of dry transfers of people dancing. I think Malcolm probably used them on a record sleeve for Human League, right? These sort of generic kind of forms for architects of people in trees and, all that sort of thing. And they were like kind of clip art, if you like. So that and the font really were my first kind of visible kind of introduction to sort of graphic design. But if I went further back, I mean, I was born in Brighton and, well, brought up in Hove and near the seaside. And actually on the way to the seaside is a petrol station, which is Shell. And I didn't know, I mean, I must have been like really young, right? Like a toddler, but I always associated the Shell with the trip to the seaside, not with the fueling of the car, because we would be walking past it. So that was a bit of graphic design that was kind of like really, a rebus. Before you can learn to read and think about typefaces or anything, you have this symbol, Shell, which I always associated with seaside. So I guess that is my my first introduction to graphic design. I'm working on, oh gosh, quite a few projects at the moment. I mean, if I have more than I can remember, then I'm usually in trouble. That's it. I've got such a poor memory. We have a very large corporate program for a really interesting client, actually, and it's in the pharmaceutical area. And it's interesting because it's a multinational, and from being, I guess, considered, like one of those industries which people thought maybe were I don't know, like dubious, just because it's sort of like it's sort of clouded with regulation and the unknown, to being the people that we really rely on, in a sense, to get us out of the hole that we find ourselves in with things like, with the current virus. So it's been really fascinating by working with a bunch of very, very dedicated and very clever individuals in a corporation, trying to kind of find a way to communicate to their audiences. So that's one. And at the other end of the scale, I'm doing a kind of little startup in France for a what they call a direct consumer cookware. And I'm working with my fellow partners at the Pentagram, who's doing the industrial design, creating the kitchenware, the pots, the pans, and utensils, etc., etc. And we're doing the branding and the collateral and the packaging and all of those things. So it's a very holistic project, and then that's really fascinating. We're in the middle of that at the moment. And there's other stuff in between, but those are kind of represent the two poles of where I'm at. It's the third question, is it? What was your? All right. Yeah. Okay. I think if all creative courses have always been highly competitive, right? I mean, from the word go. I mean, there was no time when it wasn't difficult to kind of eke out a living out of being an artist or an applied artist or a designer. Call yourself what you will. So you do need to be, I suppose, like you just need to keep going, really. So to be stoical, don't expect to get there immediately. There are no shortcuts, frankly, none at all. And the more experience you gain, the better you become at something. So is to keep on keeping on, really, as much as anything. And no matter how dire the job market may look, and no matter how kind of many fellow graduates have actually come out in the same year as you, if you've got a bit of belief, then stick with it, and eventually you'll find your audience. It may not be exactly where you first expected it to be. You might, like, I don't know, go into a course on information graphics and end up being a kind of, I don't know, working in styling of flower arranging or theater design. It doesn't, I mean, rarely do we actually end up exactly where we first started. So, there are always other possibilities. That would be my advice. As a creative, if you apply yourself, there are always other possibilities to the ones that don't necessarily come straight away.